Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Hare. As always, joined by my co-host, Jacob Robam. And today we have a very special guest because we are joined by Fox Sports NBA analyst Chris Broussard. Chris, thank you so much for coming on today.
It's my pleasure to be on, guys. How you doing?
We're great. How are you?
I'm good.
So, Chris, I want to talk first about the biggest trade in recent NBA, the Russell Westbrook trade. So, Russell was traded for Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, and the Lakers' first-round draft pick. Chris, I'm not a fan of the trade because I don't think the Lakers have enough depth, and I don't like that Russ, AD, and LeBron aren't great shooters. But what's your take on the trade?
Well, I think everything you said is relevant and
Mhm.
accurate because they aren't very good shooters, which is going to make it tougher for them to play together. And I don't think it's a great fit with their big three, particularly Russ and LeBron.
Mhm.
That said, you got to give them a puncher's chance because the talent is incredible. The West is wide open. There's no world beater in the West. Kawhi Leonard's hurt for the Clippers. Who knows when he'll be back? And nobody else out there scares you. And then LeBron is one of the smartest players we've ever seen. So maybe he can figure out a way to work it out. But they've got a lot of issues to iron out. Number one, they have to fill out the roster. So what is the rest of that roster going to look like? Obviously, they've got to get a ton of great shooters. And a lot of people have compared them to Miami, where they say, well, hold up about in criticizing that LeBron and Russ and saying they can't shoot, so they can't excel together because Wade and LeBron weren't great shooters either. And they obviously won 2 championships. Well, there's a few differences. One, LeBron was at his athletic peak in Miami, so he was a different player. He's still great, but he was better back then, and mainly defensively. He and Wade used to wreak havoc on teams defensively. He and Westbrook aren't going to be able to do that. Secondly, the three-point shot was not as big a part of the game back then as it is now. It was still a big part. I mean, you had to hit threes, and we know that because Ray Allen saved them. Shane Battier helped them beat Oklahoma City in the championship. So threes were important, but not nearly as important and as big a part of the game as they are now. Pace and spacing wasn't quite as big a deal back then as it is now. And then thirdly, they surrounded those two with tremendous shooters. Mario Chalmers, Ray Allen, Shane Battier, Mike Miller. And they're going to have a hard time putting that type of shooting around LeBron, Russell, and AD. So those are some of the challenges that they're going to have. I think the best thing for them to do, in my view, would be to put LeBron as the point guard and let him set the table for Russ and for AD. And obviously, Russ will have times to bring the ball up in transition. And then when LeBron's on the bench with the second unit, but I think LeBron as the primary decision maker will be the best move for them. So puncher's chance. I like Brooklyn better. If everybody in the league's healthy, I like Brooklyn. But you can't just completely overlook the Lakers when they have that type of talent and then a great, smart player like LeBron.
When you look at one of the pieces going the other way in Kyle Kuzma, who's really struggled, especially this past season, got a lot of criticism from people around the NBA. Do you think the move to Washington could potentially resurrect his career?
He's a good player. He's not a great player. So I don't think anywhere he goes is he going to be this great player. He could probably up his scoring average some because obviously he was very low on the totem pole with the Lakers. He'll get his opportunities. I think he can score, 16, 17, maybe 18 points a game. Not an all-star or anything like that. But sure, he's going to get more opportunities. He should be a smarter player. He doesn't always make the right decisions or take the best shots. But I'm sure as he gets older and having played with LeBron, I think when he leaves, he'll recognize a lot of the things LeBron was talking about that he may not have really appreciated when he was there with LeBron. And now he'll be with young players himself in Washington who really don't have a history of winning. So I think that that'll actually help him mature and be a better player. But yeah, he'll be good. Not great, not an all-star, but he'll be good and put up some numbers.
So I want to move on and talk about Ben Simmons and the possibility of him being traded from Philadelphia. Obviously, lots of rumors going around the NBA. People thought he might be traded on draft night. That clearly didn't happen. But I want to ask, what is the potential package that you think the Sixers might get? Obviously, we've heard that they're asking for a lot. It seems like maybe they're not going to get that. We heard about a package from the Warriors that included Wiggins, Wiseman, and a bunch of picks, and the Warriors quickly rejected that. So what do you think? What have you been hearing? What's the possible trade package for Ben Simmons?
Well, they're not going to get what they've been asking for because they've been asking for the moon. All right. But people will tell you, and we'll see if this plays out, but people will tell you they're intent on trading. You talk to people around the league, they say, oh, they want to trade. So they're doing the smart thing by, asking high and, seeing if you can get a nice deal for him. I still think Ben Simmons can be a very good player in this league. I think if he's in a situation where almost like he's not as good as Giannis, obviously he's not as aggressive as Giannis, but I think you could build around him like the Bucks have built around Giannis, and you surround him with shooting. You let Ben bring the ball up court in transition. You let him bring the ball up court. And in the half court sets, you can get him at the dunker spot or in the post. And then surround him with shooters. He's a great passer and playmaker. The problem in Philly is that you have Joel Embiid in the post. So I don't think Ben needs to go somewhere where there's a low post player, because for a team to guard Ben because he can't shoot and won't shoot, the only place you can put him is down low in the half court set. So you're not playing 4-on-5. And so that's why he can't really coexist with a guy like Joel Embiid. And so I think that that's how you have to build around him. You talk to people around the league, some really don't want much to do with him at this point. Others really like him and agree with what I'm saying and think you can really build around him. So I think they can get a decent package for him, but they're not going to get what they're, hoping for. Although if I'm Bradley Beal, I would go to Washington. I get his loyalty and all that's well and good, but I would go to Washington and be like, look, trade me to a contender. And I think that'd be good for the Wizards because they got a new young coach and it's time for them to rebuild. All right. And so I get it. They think they can get money to rebuild around Bradley Beal, but unless they're bringing in another superstar, they're not going anywhere in the East, even if they make the playoffs. So I would, if I'm Beal, I go to them and I say, look, I'd like you to trade me to a contender. I'll work with you. And I would name Philadelphia and Golden State. And if Philadelphia in that situation, obviously that's a great get for Ben Simmons. You're going to have to give up some other stuff. But, that would probably be the best case scenario. They talked with Golden State. If I'm Golden State, and I know he's an integral part of that dynasty, and he's been great for him both on and off the court, even though he's volatile and all that. Draymond. I don't need Draymond and Ben Simmons. All right. I think Ben Simmons is a younger, potentially better version of Draymond. And so if I'm Golden State, I'm looking to put Draymond in that deal. And I actually think Draymond could help Philadelphia because they need leadership on the court. They need a winner. And I think obviously he fits that bill. And if you have shooting around him, he will shoot. You see in Team USA, he's actually hitting a bunch of shots, but he will shoot. And that at least makes him a threat that Ben isn't. So those are some of my thoughts on the whole Ben Simmons situation. And overall, Ben he's got to get over this mental block wherever he goes, even if he's in a favorable situation where he doesn't have to play on the perimeter a ton. He still has to get over that mental block of foul shooting and jump shooting. Even if he's not a great jump shooter, just be willing to take the shot to keep the defense honest.
Now, in terms of the Sixers, I mean, obviously it was a disappointment last season, losing in the second round to the Hawks. How much longer would you say their championship window is open?
Well, it's open as long as Joel Embiid is healthy.
Mhm.
I mean, that's how good he is. Now that's a somewhat of a big if with Joel because he gets banged up quite a bit. But as long as he's healthy, man, they're in the hunt. Doesn't mean they'll win it, but they're in the hunt. Tobias Harris is a very good player. Seth Curry, emerged a little more last in the playoffs in particular. So if they can get a good package for Ben, which they should be able to get a good package, not the outlandish ones they're asking for, but I think they could be good. Dame Lillard is one he's out there as well and deciding what he wants to do. I think he'll ultimately go back to Portland for this season. And if they don't go further, then he'll talk about getting traded next season. But he's another one. And I don't blame him for that. See what Chauncey can do. Like I said, the West is open. Maybe if Chauncey Billups can improve their defense, and they can make a little noise out west. So I don't mind him giving him a year, but he's another one where you can't blame him if he said, look, let's send me away, and I'm looking at Philly. Now, I don't think he's necessarily looking at Philly like that. New York is a possibility for him. He likes New York. But if I was him, I'm looking at Philly. I don't know what you're waiting for. What don't you like about Philadelphia? With Joel Embiid, that gives you something. You saw with Milwaukee, having bigs is valuable. There's very few dominant big men in the post in this league. Joel Embiid could be one of them. He is one of them, but I think he could be even more dominant down low because he spends a lot of time shooting mid-range shot. His mid-range shot is great.
Mm-hmm.
He shoots the occasional three, and he's decent at that. But I'd like him a little more in the post where he could just beast people. And you saw Giannis did that. Brook Lopez did that in the finals, and that's valuable. So if I was Dame, that's where I'd be looking. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him as well.
For sure. I mean, we talked about Embiid in the post. If only he would go down in the post a little bit more. I mean, he probably could be the most dominant player in the NBA. And
what's interesting, I don't know if you guys are watching Team USA, but and they blew out the Czech Republic today in the second half. But the European teams are not beholden to one style of play. It's like us here in America. It's like we can only do one thing. We used to be inside out, right? Where we try to get the ball inside to a big man and play off of him, whether he scored or kicked it out to the shooters. And then in international play, the European squads were shooting the lights out from three and almost beating us, and then did beat us. And then we said, oh, we got to adjust and we have to incorporate the three more and the drive and kick and all of that. And now we're overly reliant on the 3-point shot. And everybody's going small and nobody wants to post up and all that. And now you look at these Olympics, France went big against us and beat us. Czech Republic went big and didn't beat us, but gave us trouble in the first half by just posting us. And so that's better basketball when you're versatile. When you shoot the three, yes, but you also shoot the mid-range and you also can post. And that is how we should be teaching, training, playing in America, not just let's just launch a bunch of threes. The guys are great three-point shooters, but that is a dumbing down of basketball. It doesn't have to be that way. There's no rule and there's no reason you can't excel. You can't become like a great three-point shooter and work on your perimeter skills and also develop a post game. Mm-hmm. There's no reason you can't do that. All right. So that's what we need to start doing. And Embiid is I know he's not from America, but he's leaving points and production on the board because he doesn't play more inside. Again, his mid-range is valuable because he's great out there, and that should be a weapon. but you can also utilize the post play a little more too.
You make a fantastic point about Embiid. I think that nothing more frustrating as a fan watching him take threes that, yeah, he's a fine 3-point shooter, but really he's going to score the ball in the post. He's going to score the ball shooting mid-range shots. And it's just frustrating when you know the guy can score 9 times out of 10, and then you see him sitting out there on the 3-point perimeter trying to take someone from there. And it's just like, get the ball inside, dominate there. It's just frustrating as a Sixers fan to watch that.
Yeah, and again, some of it's just Embiid likes to do that. But some of it was Simmons, because you got to put Simmons, like I said, in the dunker spot or in the post so they guard him. And then you got to look at Doc Rivers too. I mean, that's what you brought Doc in, and I get it. This year he went down low a little more. He was more dominant, but still, Doc, he needs to be down there a lot more, and that's on Doc. Right now, I mean, they looked a lot like when Brent Brown coached them. I mean, just similar issues. Still not a mentally tough team, I don't think. And so that's what you brought Doc Rivers in to instill. And so he's got to do that.
Yeah, and I think with that series against the Hawks, you saw their inability to execute in close games down the stretch when Atlanta tightened up their defense are all things that existed a lot throughout the Brett Brown era. So I think that when you see that, it sort of worries you as a Sixers fan, but it also is like, come on, it's time to move on from that.
Absolutely.
So I want to get back to Team USA, which you were talking about earlier. I mean, they've been kind of a disappointment so far. I would expect them to go through the exhibition games and the beginning of the series or the Olympics to win all their games, and it's been disappointing. Do you believe that Popovich is the problem of the team or the construction of the roster by Colangelo?
Man, I mean, there's a lot of problems. Pop has not done a great job, and Pop is obviously one of the best coaches in NBA history. But at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. Mm-hmm. And when you go over there in international competition and you've got the best talent and you lose, I got to look at the coach. I'm sorry. And so Pop some of it, but certainly not all of it. Jerry Colangelo, the roster construction is a very small team. Now they finally brought in JaVale McGee, which, he's not playing a ton, but that's at least some size. But it's a very, like I said, we lack size. We lack like bulk and strength inside. And you just see some of these teams are abusing us inside. So, and they don't really even have a great playmaker. Mm-hmm. I mean, Damian Lillard's a terrific player and a future Hall of Famer in my book, but he's not the guy that's necessarily setting the table for everybody else. He shoots threes, he goes off his dribble and gets his, and will get some assists off of that, but he's not that true point guard that's looking to get everybody else involved. Drew Holiday's somewhat, but not really a true table setter. They don't have one. Mm-hmm. And so we've got guys like that in America. And so they did construct the roster not in the best way. Let's put it that way. So I think that's a part of it. And then I also think that the way we're teaching and training our young players, our young players coming up and all the way up to the NBA level, they know how to play 1-man, 2-man basketball, high pick and roll, drive and kick. All right. But they don't really know how to play 5-man basketball where I'm passing it and going to cut through the lane, or I'm posting, I'm setting the screen. Like our best players, they handling, right? And if they don't have the rock, they twiddling their thumbs or spotting up, waiting. And so, number one, we don't really know how to play that way. And then when an international game calls for some of that, even if we're willing, we're not as comfortable doing that. Okay. And then when you're thinking too much, you're not going to be on the top of your game. And then on the other side of the ball, we're not used to guarding that. Mm-hmm. We're not used to guarding dudes moving all the time and setting screens other than the pick and roll. And so that is tough to handle as well. And then the rules. The rules are a little different. It's not an excuse. It's just a little bit of an explanation. The ball's different. The zone, you can play a true zone, which really limits the ISO play. You know, when you can play a full true zone, then the ISO guy that can shake you up and get to the hole, that eliminates a lot of that because the paint is clogged. And so if you watch our team, like even today against the Czech Republic, the way we won it was our defensive pressure on the ball was tremendous. And that got them out of their offense in the second half. And then we shot the three and we hit a lot of threes or long jumpers. So, but there was no real variety. It wasn't, you know, necessarily great passing, great, you know, post play or anything like that. Dudes hit threes and jumpers and D'd up on the perimeter and got them out of their game. That was it. So you wonder, is that going to work against some of these better teams?
I also don't understand why Trae Young isn't on the roster. I mean, he's one.
Well, Trae's one that could have been a playmaker. I know everybody thinks of him as a scorer, and he is a scorer, but he's a great passer. And when Atlanta drafted him, if you talk to people there and you know, the thought was, wow, he's the next, or similar to a Steph Curry. And a lot of people there were saying, well, we see a lot of Steve Nash in him because he is a great passer and table setter. So yeah, he would have been a guy I think that would have been good for a team like this.
For sure. And I mean, in terms of Popovich, who is another coach that you would have liked to see coach the team this year?
Well, the guy that's had all the success is Krzyzewski.
Yeah.
We were 75-1 under him. And so, you know, look, they still may come back and win it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still optimistic to some degree that they can do that. But if they lose it, it's going to be on the players and it's going to be on Pop. This shouldn't just be on the players. I mean, but it shouldn't just be on Pop either. They both will need to wear it. And the thing about Pop, because I've always loved that Pop, the thing I've thought has made him great is he's adjusted to his talent. Mm-hmm. Like when he had David Robinson and Tim Duncan, they played the Twin Towers and they had some shooting around them. You know, they had some three-point Mario Ellie and guys like that. And then when Robinson was gone, they were based on Duncan, you know, and you had Tony Parker and Ginobili and some Bruce Bowen and guys, but Duncan was the focal point down lower at the elbow. As Duncan got older, Tony Parker became the offensive focal point. And Pop was like, we're still going to play inside out, but the inside is going to be based on Parker getting in the paint and either scoring or kicking out and play off of that. And then, I mean, they went from being a defensive focused team to being an offensive focused team. And when they beat Miami, yeah, they still were good defensively, but they were an offensive team. Mm-hmm. And then when Ginobili and Parker and Duncan were gone, or at least Duncan's gone, Kawhi, then they got Kawhi and Aldridge. They became more ISO with Kawhi and letting him do his thing before he left. And so Pop has always been great at adjusting to his talent. And he hasn't been able to find that balance or that great way to play with this crew. And a lot of that's probably due to him not having the time, right? You just don't have enough time yet. And the roster's not that versatile. And so I think that is one thing that's kind of working against him. But Pop's international record is not good. It's just no two ways around it. I think he's 12-6 overall, 7-3 if you don't count, like in the games that count, not exhibitions. And every one of those games, he's had the most talent. And so that's not a good record. So yeah, he's gonna have to wear some of this if they lose. But it's not only Pop, it's him and the players and Colangelo as well.
Now, do you believe this team can still win gold?
I do, because they do. Look, they got the most talent. They've got arguably the best player in the world in Kevin Durant. I mean, you know, it tickles me when I hear these people say, well, you know, they got NBA players too. and they got 3 NBA players, or they have, 7 NBA players or 5 NBA players. But guess what? We got the better NBA players, all right? They don't have Kevin Durant. They don't have Devin Booker. They don't have Jason Tatum. They don't have Damian Lillard, Draymond Green. I mean, are we serious? They got role players. So stop it with these excuses. Oh, they got NBA players. I mean, look, honestly, if we don't win this gold, then you know what? Our guys just aren't as good as we think they are. I mean, we will wax the world in a one-on-one tournament, but when it comes to playing the game of basketball and playing different ways and understanding different sets and different coverages and being versatile and being able to do more than shoot and dribble, if we don't win this gold, we're not as good as we think we are. And I get it. These aren't our absolute, outside of Durant and Lillard and, Booker. I mean, these aren't our absolute best players. Yeah, there's no LeBron, there's no Steph, there's no Kawhi, guys like that. But we shouldn't have to send our absolute 12 best players to beat these teams. And all this stuff about the world's caught up, the world. Yeah, the world, the entire world, all the other countries put together, they've caught us. Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, Luka. But no one country has caught us. Nigeria hasn't caught us. Slovenia, which is the size of like Iowa, actually smaller than Iowa in terms of population, they haven't caught. It's the size of Idaho, I believe. They haven't caught us. Lithuania and France and Spain have not caught us. So we just have to realize we might not be as good as we think we are. And if we don't win this gold, I think that's something we just gonna have to accept and get back in the lab and recognize that there are different ways to play basketball. We don't have to be all drive and kick or all high pick and roll, all 3-pointers. Some teams should be posting. Some teams should be mid-range. Some teams should be 3. Some teams should play up-tempo. Some teams should play slow tempo. Play to your strengths. If I don't have good shooting, why in the world am I going to shoot the ball from 3 all the time? So that's what I think could come out of this. Win or lose, it should come out of this. Because even if we win it, we're getting, slapped around a little more than we should be.
Well, Chris, I know you're a very busy man, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on. But before we let you go, I have one final question. Who do you believe is the best player in the NBA right now?
It's one of those, there are times in the NBA where there's a definitive best player, and win or lose, like if Jordan didn't win it, you still knew he was the best player. If LeBron didn't win it, you still knew he was the best player, and everybody understood that. I don't think we're in that time right now. It's going to be fluid. Right now I'm fine with Giannis wearing that cap because he was dominant, and he took a team with no other perennial all-star to the freaking championship. The key for Giannis is to play to his strengths. I said before the finals, even if he wins it, he won't be the best player because he would play too often to his weaknesses. I don't mind if you can't shoot that well if you don't go out there and shoot all the time. Kareem didn't shoot the jumper that well, but he didn't play to that. He did the sky hook. Shaq wasn't out there shooting threes, so we don't worry that Shaq wasn't a great shooter. He dominated you in his strength. And so Giannis in the finals was dominant in his strength, inside, both defensively and offensively. Now, he doesn't just post up. He's going to get there from flashing, from cutting, from rolling, picking and rolling, and things, backdoor cuts, all that, and the Euro step in transition. But he can dominate inside. And if going forward, he plays that way, and then on the perimeter makes the right decisions, and over time, he'll add a better mid-range shot, maybe even a better 3-point shot. then he can really, then you can do more outside. But if he plays to his strengths, he can be the best player in the world. I think LeBron's still in the conversation, although he clearly has declined. And Kevin Durant is obviously in the conversation. I think it's those three. I would have said earlier in the season, I thought James Harden should have been in that conversation. But Harden in the playoffs, and I get it, he had the hamstring, but sometimes he just doesn't really want, it just looks like it, that he just sometimes isn't himself in the big moments in the postseason. So until he overcomes that, and at least that reputation, then you can't put him in that discussion.
I certainly agree with you on the James Harden point and the Giannis point, but I want to thank you again for coming on today and speaking with us. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
All right, guys.